Keepers of the Clow is proudly presented by the Vintage Anime Video Network. Visit us at www.vintageanimevideo.com.
You're listening to the first episode of Keepers of the Clow, presented by myself, Cece Yamato, and Alex Summers of Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast. If you're listening to this as a podcast, there is a YouTube version with visual elements. Links are in the description. Be sure to stick around until after the credits for Chris's Corner, and thank you for listening.
So, my name is Alex, and I go by Alex Summers on Instagram, Alex Summers SFE if you want to follow me there. And I actually host Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast with Chris Mayick, who you guys will get to hear from at the end of this week's episode. And I reached out to you, Matthew, right? It's what you're going by Matthew?
Matt's preferred.
Okay, Matt. So I reached out to Matt because I started looking around for other people around my age who were interested in Cardcaptors or Cardcaptor Sakura, because it has a similar importance to me that Sailor Moon does. And I found you, and you were just so into it right away, and you actually kind of helped me out when I was looking for the VHS, because there's a little confusion regarding, the way they released that and everything. And we connected in that way, and I was like, this guy seems like he really knows his stuff. And that's what made me ask you about potentially doing a show like this. So my voice on this show, for those of you who are coming over from Moonstar, he's sort of taking over my role in the sense that he is our in-house Cardcaptor Sakura expert. And I'm the voice of, I was an avid fan of Cardcaptors as a kid, but I absolutely do not know everything about it by any means. And that's why you're here. You're here to teach me everything, and through that, teach the audience. So yeah, that's who I am. That's what my perspective is for the show. What about you?
Yeah, sure. I'm Matt. I'm the self-proclaimed Cardcaptors expert, and up until very recently, one of two people I knew who actually liked Cardcaptors. Online, you'll find me as CC Yamato on YouTube and Twitter, and I'm also responsible for the Cardcaptor Museum on Tumblr and Instagram. Those are both kind of dead right now, but I'm working to revive them. And I guess my biggest claim to fame and the best credential for being on the show is that I'm currently the world record holder for the largest collection of Cardcaptor Sakura related merchandise.
Actually, didn't know that.
It's like, I'm sorry. I haven't organized my thoughts here, so I just figure, why not just open with that?
Well, no, that's a great thing to open with, because that gives you a lot of credibility right out the gate. So I love that. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, great. So I guess I'll start with that as, yes, what gives me some credentials as to why I would be talking about Cardcaptors. I have a similar backstory with this series. I watched it when I was a kid, and when I was younger, I watched Sailor Moon, the series that you do your podcast for. And I loved this show, but I was definitely alone in that fandom for a long time. It wasn't until the series got a revival in 2016 that I really started getting to meet other people who liked the original series, the sub, but I was still very much alone as someone who actually appreciated the Cardcaptors dub for what it was. So it was great to meet someone who had an interest that I could talk about. And when you approached me about doing this was like, this is the perfect platform for me to finally get out 20 years of desiring to talk about this series that no one in the fandom likes.
I can relate to that whole thing with it too, where it's, even growing up back then, there was something about the way Cardcaptors dropped where I feel like it fell through the cracks for a lot of people. And it was, if you were a fan of it, I knew one other person who liked it, and that's because they were also my friend who liked Sailor Moon, so we just watched everything together, But yeah, finding people to discuss it with, specifically the original dub, is really hard. Let's, just so people know where our frame of reference is coming from time-wise, I'm 33 years old, and I watched Cardcaptors live on TV. For me, it was on Kids WB on like Saturday morning cartoons and stuff. And then it was sort of the haphazard VHS release, and that was my way of consuming it. What about for you?
So similar age range. I'm 35. I also watched it on Kids WB. I watched it very religiously. It was kind of I was at that age where I was discovering anime, or understanding what anime actually was, because like I'd watched Sailor Moon, I'd watched the Ocean's dub of Dragon Ball Z. I understood that these things were different than the other cartoons on TV, but I didn't understand like the significance. So Cardcaptors was one of the first series I understood. Oh, this is a show from Japan that they have put English on. So that's one of the good things for me. After that Cardcaptors, though, I actually never really got to see the show again until a few years ago, during the pandemic, where I had a lot of time on my hands. I finally sat down and started digging to find all of the series, or as much of it as I could find. And it turns out that I was able to not only find the episodes that aired in America, I found the rest of the series.
Are you talking about the redub?
No, I am not. Well, we can talk about the Animax dub if you would like, but no, I'm talking that I did manage to actually find that Cardcaptors was entirely dubbed by Nelvana. It's just that we didn't get about half of the series in North America, but
That's
overseas territories did, which was a pleasant surprise. Unfortunately, that had its own challenge in trying to find those episodes, but I did find
That's
them.
true. So for those who don't know, because we're gonna have probably a longer intro today, but we should set up some facts about the show just right up top. What is it that makes Cardcaptors or Cardcaptor Sakura so complicated to follow in English? Like, what is the issue? What happened?
Um, oh, so from like a production standpoint.
No, I mean from a release standpoint. So, like, how many different versions do we have, and the order issue, and you know what I mean, like
Oh,
all of that.
okay. So first off, Cardcaptors was licensed over here. It was produced by Nelvana, but then it was licensed down here by Kids WB to be aired. They took what appears to be a 35 episode deal, and so since the original series is 70 episodes, that obviously meant that a lot had to be cut out. So the North American release of Cardcaptors got 35 of the original 70 episodes, even though all 70 were dubbed. That's the dub Cardcaptors. Overseas, in the PAL regions like Europe and Australia, it appears that they got the entire series. At the very least, it was released on home video, because that's where I found it. So those are both the Cardcaptors dub done by Nelvana. Now the other thing that you mentioned is that over here in North America, several episodes were played out of order, and they did that because they wanted to make the show more gender neutral, or at least attempt to, by introducing the secondary card captor, Shaoran, into the story immediately. Even though he doesn't come into the story till episode 7, they played his episode first so that he is there from the start.
Oh, you're right. Actually, now that you say that, I didn't clock that when I was taking my notes for today's episode, but he's not there in the version that we watched today.
Oh,
And I'm used to him being there because I always watched the other one.
right. Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, okay.
Exactly. So what we're doing, we're going to watch the entire Nelvana dub, which is something that probably most people listening won't have ever gotten to see, because again, we only got 35 episodes over here in North America.
And the movie, right? The first one.
We got the first movie that was done. I believe it was done by Nelvana. It was the same cast. The second movie was dubbed by Funimation after Cardcaptors was done, so it was a completely different voice cast. So I've generally not counted the second movie dub as part of the watching history.
Right, right. So we have that, and you were saying I think that explains why they aired it in the order that they did, because I never was able to figure out what the point of that was. But that does make sense because a lot of shows back then, it was like, is it a boy thing or a girl thing? And that kind of cut off 50% of the market, which is what I think they were starting to realize at the time. Because they sort of, with Sailor Moon, they tried to, I remember in certain advertisements, they would be like, the girls are going to love blah, but the boys are going to love the nonstop action, you know? And they're trying to push this narrative that, like, hey, we know this looks girly, but boys can like it too. Um, it's a very specific thing of the 90s, I feel like, right?
Yeah, it was pure marketing, which was always it was always undercut by the fact that yes, the advertising for the show tried to make it more gender neutral, and even, and we'll talk about it as those episodes happen, but even some of the dialogue tries to make Shaoran more of an equal to Sakura than he ever really is in the story. But the gender neutral thing was very undercut by the fact that all of the card captors toys were always deep in the girls toy aisle. Like you had to walk through the
Yeah.
ocean of Barbie to get to any of the card captors in Toys R Us.
The only time I ever saw them was actually at Blockbuster, weirdly, because I
Wow.
like probably because of that, because my parents never let me go in the girls' toy stuff. Like, so when I saw it at Blockbuster, it's kind of like, well, it's just out, you know, there isn't really girl section there.
Mhm.
But even looking back on it, for I remember there being like a yellow set of the cards that didn't seem particularly gender anything to me. You know what I mean? So I guess they kind of did put some effort into the packaging at least to make it sort of, I don't
Yeah,
know.
because I actually own one. Like the Cloudbook toy itself is fairly generic on its own. But they still put it right next to all the dolls, and that was the card captors didn't get a lot of the toys that like are available in Japan that I have in my collection.
Mhm.
Like the card captors toy line was pretty minimal. I think I have basically everything that was ever made for card captors. I think I'm able to fit in one 55-gallon tote.
How many items do you think it is total if you had to estimate?
Individual card captors items, I've probably got less than 50. If
So could you complete that's like a completable collection though, for you know what I mean?
Oh, it's totally a completable collection. The thing that I've found in 6-ish years of collecting is that I don't know what I don't know exists. Like
Right.
every time I go online and I look through, I I go through like Yahoo auctions and such. There's just new stuff all the time. Like just this obscure like to say how crazy it gets. There are shampoo bottles that I'm still trying to track down. So
That's I never even would have thought they would have bothered with the shampoo.
oh, there's so much branding that we never
That is
got
so
over
funny.
here.
Oh, a Japanese one. Yeah, I would believe that. I would have been shocked if an American company did that. I think we did talk about doing, because you have so many items though, and there is a lot. Each week you're going to choose one item to kind of feature and do a little segment about, right? And
Yeah,
you're going to talk about it, and then whatever whatever the item is, we'll share it as part of the show's thing. So wherever you're following the show, probably on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, we'll post photos there, right?
yeah, that sounds good. I think I already
Yeah,
picked the right item. I'll just do the cloud book this week.
that works. That's perfect. I have a bunch of notes here. The first thing I wanted to know is the Japanese episode title versus the Nelvana episode title.
Right. Yeah. Oh wow. I'm bad. I should know the Japanese title offhand. It's like the mysterious book, right?
I don't know, actually. I have to look
Oh
at it.
no, neither of us know. I mean, I know it's one fateful day in the card captors one. Uh,
It is.
how
It is Sakura and the Mysterious Magic Book.
okay? I was like 50% right. I mean, I had most of the nouns in there.
I like that title for the Japanese one. Sometimes in Sailor Moon, I've noticed the titles can be very spoilery and direct. Like there, we had one that I looked at recently, and it was literally like this character dies. And like that's just the name of the episode. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So I'm glad it's not quite like that direct here. And then also it says this one, according to this Wikipedia, the episode we're covering today was originally episode number 21 in the US rollout, the one that you were talking about where it goes out of order. So that's like,
Yes.
what an odd jump.
So, and that one's so that there's an interesting little extra bit to that, which
Hmm.
is that in the episode as we watched it as One Fateful Day, and that's the episode that aired basically overseas. Over here in North America, they actually bookend that episode with clips from a unaired Cardcaptor Sakura episode, which I believe is episode 42, where she captures the sand card. So they bookend it by showing her capturing the sand card, and then they do the freeze frame sort of thing, and it's like, yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how a 10-year-old girl ends up over a sea of sand. Well, let me tell you a story.
You're probably wondering how I got into this mess. I mean, how does an 11-year-old girl end up flying over a whirlpool of sand? It's kind of a long story.
And that is why One Fateful Day has that narration overlay at the beginning and end of the episode, because it's in the original Nelvana broadcast of it. It's being bookended by a different episode entirely.
I did always find it a little strange as a kid, the first episode, because they revealed so much right away.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, looking back, like it is kind of a powerful storytelling device to give kind of a big picture and then rewind. That is like a thing that they do a lot in movies. So I kind of get what they were going for with it. I just don't think it necessarily works.
It didn't work. I agree. It doesn't necessarily work because they basically, I mean, they took episode 7 and made it episode 1. But funny
Yeah.
enough, it does work a little bit like how the manga for Cardcaptor Sakura begins, because Cardcaptor Sakura, the manga, actually also begins with Sakura having already captured a few cards. And partway through that chapter, it flashes back to her opening the book and meeting Kiro for the first time. So it's a weird parallel, actually, that the Cardcaptor's dub almost did a thing that was more like the original
That is
manga
funny.
than the anime did.
I kind of like that actually. And to their credit, I didn't know that it was out of order until someone told me. I just knew that it felt a little funny. Like
Yeah.
I could tell that there was some editing to it. So it's like it wasn't overly obvious, I don't think.
Some editing, he says.
Yeah, well, oh, you know what I mean. Uh so oh, also the first thing I noticed about this episode was this version of the dub that we're watching. It is the Nelvana, but it uses an English version of the original Japanese intro song, which is not what I'm used to. I'm used to like the Card Captors like dub song that they had written for it that
Yes.
was shown on TV.
That was a pleasant surprise when I was going around finding all these episodes. When I discovered the PAL region releases, I discovered, as you did, that in the PAL regions, they took the original Catch You Catch Me song and they wrote their own lyrics to it. So similar to how the Deke dub of Sailor Moon, they use
Yeah.
Moonlight Densetsu, but they wrote their own lyrics. Like, same deal. In the PAL regions, you got Catch You Catch Me, but they wrote their own lyrics over that music. So they have an English version of Catch You Catch Me, even though it's not translated. It's their own thing.
Yeah.
Unlike over here in North America, where we got the Card Captors song. I have no idea who wrote it. I'm assuming it was done in house, but I would love to talk about the music in the series, because I think the one thing Card Captors does really well is have an actually really good soundtrack. But
Yeah.
I know nothing about music in general, and I have no way to find out. Like,
Well, you're in luck because I'm a music teacher, so
oh, that's great.
I wrote down a bunch of stuff about the music actually. And the thing about the original, the Card Captors song that was written for it that I really responded to, first of all, I don't think anyone will debate the lyrics get repetitive.
Oh,
That's
totally.
something they could have done better. But musically, the actual score of the instruments underneath the vocals is so strong to me. The thing I respond to in it, they have a lot of strings, which I always like.
Hmm.
So string instruments like violin, viola, cello, and string bass or upright bass. And then also they have this, it's a thing that's very specific to the 90s that I heard a lot in like Britney Spears and boy band music too. But when they hit a drum beat, there's some added sound effects over it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not
That's
really, but I probably would if I had it like
if
playing
you
in my
listen
ear.
to it, you'll hear it. There's like a special kind of crash that is not actually a drum. It's
Hmm.
something added from something else. And I actually really respond well to that too. I love when they use sound effects or things to create sound that is not an instrument
Hmm.
in music. One of my favorite songs, they do a lot of it by hitting bottles actually, which is kind of cool. Glass bottles. But yeah, so Card Captors specifically, the music and like the background music too is all really, really well done. So we can dig into that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like that was a thing. When I was rewatching the series, I started rewatching the series last year, a year or two ago. Like when I finally had all these, and I started watching them. That was one of the things that I picked up on that I did not remember the soundtrack, just the backing tracks, being as good as they were, which is like the original the sub versions of the music. They're all iconic. I have all those soundtracks. Uh, but yeah, I also love the late '90s pop aesthetic of the music that is in this. Like, I think it very much
Yeah,
fits it fits the feel of the show surprisingly well.
it really does. And I'm wondering if we know if there was ever an official soundtrack released for those tracks, like without it being having the show's audio over it. Do you know what I mean?
Right. So I do own an official Card Captors soundtrack, but I don't believe that CD has these backing tracks. I believe it only has the music that had lyrics. It's you know how like early in the well, I guess throughout the 90s, early 2000s, when you bought a CD for a movie, it was a bunch of licensed music that was licensed for the movie, and that's what you bought.
Yeah.
Same deal. I think the CD I have is mostly just the licensed songs that were put on the show, not any of this actual backing music, which is unfortunate. Because
Yeah.
I would love to have it.
We're going to have to do some digging and see what comes up about from that. And then also we can put some feelers out. I know there's a way to pull vocals out from audio. I am not that good at it. And so I'm not going to attempt that just yet, but some people are. So if that's something anyone wants to do where you go in and you kind of extract some of these background songs from the Nelvana dub and then clean them up and post them online, someone can do that and link us, and that would be awesome.
That would be great. I mean, I would probably. I've tried to reach out to the studios a little bit to see like if I can find stuff, but people aren't willing to talk to me about card captors, whether it's fans or professionals. Really,
Wonder why the professionals are so weird about it.
it's just I'm pretty used to getting ghosted by studios. The closest I ever got to a response was actually when I talked to Australia. Uh, because they are the license holders. The Madman Entertainment over in Australia are the license holders for ClearCard, and also they were the people who put out the VHS copies of Card Captors. So
Right.
I was emailing them about, is it possible that I can like get those? And they've sent me effectively a form letter that said it's like, we do own the license, we have no plans to release the Nelvana Card Captors dub at this time. It's
Right, they're just the standard
like
response.
I was willing to pay to
Right.
have like just send me, like, print a set for me, I will pay for it.
I hope that maybe through doing this show we can generate enough rumbling to make something like that happen, or to get a fan who has the talents to put something together, because that's what we had for the Sailor Moon ones for a really long time, and then somebody somehow found like the HQ tracks for all of it
Oh wow,
and
that'd be cool.
shared it. Yeah, so I'm so lucky in the sense that I have access to that for my other show. But we'll make do with what we can for for this.
Like, I bet the first thing to do would just be to figure out who did the music for the show. Like, that would be the
Yes.
easiest thing. But unfortunately, most of the rips that I have so far, and you've probably seen, the quality on some tracks is not necessarily the best, like the video
Hmm.
quality. So, like, reading the credits doesn't necessarily help me figure out, who did
True.
these things.
I might pop some of my VHS in and see if I can find it. But I know Bob Summers did the Sailor Moon ones, and I don't think he's listed as doing these,
That's the
but
other
I
problem.
wouldn't be shocked if he did. Because they do sort of have some similar vibes to him, not entirely,
Hmm.
but the studio who did Sailor Moon was also Canadian. You know what I mean? So it
Yeah,
would
yeah,
have
yeah.
been
Deke
the same time and the same world, I feel like.
might have been the same talent pool for all I know.
Yeah, yeah. So after we get in this episode, One Fateful Day or Sakura and the Mysterious Magic Book, we have our cool English intro that is different here.
Hmm.
And the first scene in this one is Sakura asleep having a dream. Can you describe what's going on in her dream?
Of course I can. So this is a dream sequence that she actually has several times throughout the series. It's her looking over the Tokyo Tower, and it's a premonition dream of her doing the final judgment against the character Yue, who won't be introduced for 43 episodes.
Oh,
And when I was actually prepping for this, I was playing both episodes. I was playing the sub and the dub next to each other just to understand, like, get a feel for how the episodes were cut.
mhm.
So, like, at least that part uncut, it gets pretty chaotic if I wanted to dig in the weeds on that.
Really? Like the beginning of it?
Oh yeah, this episode, like I said, was bookended into another episode in its original airing. So I'm pretty sure there's more cuts to this episode just for time's sake than anything else. I think they had to cut an additional like 2 minutes out of this.
Oh, I guess that makes sense though for what they were trying to do. Um, so go ahead and tell us with this dream here. I want to know first, well, are we focusing on the difference here first, or are we recapping this episode? You know what I mean?
Um, there's two different ways to go with it, really. Um, yeah, I liked it. I think it's good to focus, or it's good to include the differences. I was surprised because I have the note here. It's like, uh, usually, um, usually with American cartoons, they often add dialogue where a scene was normally silent. They actually did
Hmm.
like the opposite here, where they left the scene mostly silent in the dub, whereas in the sub, she actually has some dialogue during the dream.
Oh, I actually like that choice though, because it makes it a really mysterious intro with it not having a lot of talking. You know what I mean? And you're just
Hmm.
kind of like, wait, what's going on? And you're trying to figure it out yourself. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, don't worry though. They do the American thing of adding too much dialogue to other scenes that are
I'm
supposed to be
sure.
quiet. But I was actually relatively surprised throughout this episode that there was a good balance. It's way better than, say, a Saban production where every single second is filled with dialogue. That like the
Oh,
Nelvana knew how to actually write dialogue and make a show and create atmosphere. So
Saban did Digimon, right?
yeah, they did Digimon. You can still see it in Power Rangers where they're just constantly talking.
Right, right. And then after we see her wake up, can you describe her brother and their relationship? Because we get to see this for the first time.
Confrontational would be the would be the way to describe it. And it's a shame that the dub actually cuts out some of that confrontation. That you still get the key points of it, that he likes to tease her and she does not appreciate it. They do unfortunately cut out the well-known scene of him holding a cup on her head to hold her back from trying to hit him. So unfortunately, the Cardcaptors dub cuts that, which is a shame. But it seems like the Cardcaptors dub, despite wanting to give Sakura more edge, in the dub than she has in the sub. They oftentimes cut out like the acts of violence that she commits against her brother.
Keepers of the Cloud will be right back. And now, we return to Keepers of the Cloud.
Because, like, in a later scene, also, she kicks him with her inline skates. That's cut out of the Cardcaptors dub, too. So,
I'm not surprised by that because what I've learned from covering the other show, Sailor Moon, especially when they were with Deke, it was so incredibly strict at the time, what was allowed to be shown on TV, that some of the voice actors have said, even if a kid in the background just didn't have a helmet on riding a bike, they would cut the whole scene over it. And they're like, they had to change the color of certain things. They would replace certain violent images with just like white flashes and stuff like that.
oh, yeah. Fortunately, Cardcaptors didn't have that kind of problem, generally speaking, because it's a fairly non-violent show.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, is that was probably one of those instances, or probably some of the only times they even had that.
You're right,
come
yeah.
up. Which, I mean, it was so specific. There's a scene where Serena and Sailor Moon jumps off a balcony and uses an umbrella to like slow her fall and land.
Right.
And they cut that out because they didn't want kids to see that and think that that would work.
Yep.
You know?
Like, this was...
So they were probably like, oh, we can't show her hitting her brother. It'll encourage like sibling violence or something.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a lot to that. Like, all of the confrontation between them is purely verbal, that you never get to see, which, granted, like, that's mostly what their confrontations are anyway. It's mostly just trading barbs. It's the only time in the sub that Sakura really not drops her nice girl, because she is a nice girl. It's just that, like, Toya is the only one who can usually get her to can get that edge out of her. Whereas in Cardcaptors, Sakura Avalon, she is we'll get to see it as we go through this series, but I've always liked this I've always had this tagline for Cardcaptors, that everyone is a jerk in Cardcaptors. Compared to their Japanese counterparts, they wanted to toughen up this show a little bit, so everyone's got bite that they did not have before, and Sakura is no exception.
Yeah, now that you say that, her character is very saucy. You're right, she does kind of. They all have a little more bite. Maybe not Madison, but I might notice that later. I don't know.
She might be the nicest one, but they give to comment on the voice actor, Maggie Blue O'Hara, who voices Madison, gives her Maggie Blue O'Hara's voice, because she only has one voice as far as I know. But it's this California Valley Girl voice, which my understanding is people don't necessarily like it, because
really
in Japanese, Tomoyo has a very formal, very upper class way of speaking, whereas over in Cardcaptors, Madison speaks like a rich Beverly Hills girl. But to be honest, I think they both work. I love Madison's voice, because the character still comes through no matter which voice you have.
Oh yeah, I like that voice for Madison, and for me, because I grew up in the South, and so the way she speaks and enunciates was so specific, and that is something that I've always noticed, is people say words very perfectly from that area, and that is something that was unique about her voice, and it's really subtle, but I always really enjoyed that about her, and it always made her stand out to me separately from Sakura and the other female characters, because it was like a unique delivery. I guess it's just specific to the voice actress, really.
It is probably that, yeah.
Yeah. No, I love Madison's voice. I mean, people can have their opinions, but
I think the issue with Cardcaptors in general is how much of Cardcaptors was changed is what people didn't like, because like you you mentioned this way earlier that I wanted to come back to. And it's the fact that, like, if you watch Cardcaptors in a vacuum, like I did, the show, I feel, works. I think the show is actually very well put together, all things considered. If you know nothing about the original version, Cardcaptor Sakura, the show is very watchable. It's a good product. The problem with the fan base comes when you compare Cardcaptors to Cardcaptor Sakura. And then when you start counting up all the things that were excised from the series that people tend to like, all the other changes that are fine get that same
Reaction.
distaste.
Yeah.
Because now it's just like, well, it's different, therefore bad.
Bad.
Yeah,
You know?
that's how I want that. Like, that would be a great goal, for this series, would be to help people maybe try to view Cardcaptors as a thing, as just its own thing, as its own version of Cardcaptor Sakura.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there are things like I can't 100% put Cardcaptor Sakura away anymore. Like, there will always, like, part of what I'm going to be doing throughout this whole series is doing comparisons as to the episodes. But I do want to try and do my best to, like, judge Cardcaptors as a thing.
Well, let's put that into context so people get our angle. The reason we are bringing up the differences is because this show is meant to give you information as much as we can about card captors, and part of the information is that things were changed. However, I think what they'll pick up on as we go forward is we approach this with the attitude of what I described pretty much. And so while we're talking about those changes, we're not saying, and this is why you should hate the show. We're just saying, this is what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it is just a cut and dry fact. And so the fact, like, us letting you know what was changed is not us telling you that means you shouldn't like what they changed. It's just so you have the information, right?
I will do my best to not have my personal opinions on various changes.
No, you should.
But there will definitely be, like, there is definitely one episode teasing for a bit later in this series that actually broke me with my Cardcaptors watching, and I had to stop watching Cardcaptors for a while. It was a change so egregious that I could not continue.
Really? I can't even think of what it would be. But we'll save it.
Oh, absolutely. We need to hold that. I think it was episode 11. So, when we get there,
We'll get there.
we'll talk about it.
After the scene with her dad, we get the first time where we see her going to school.
Yep.
And I'm not sure, but doesn't this happen several times through the show?
The skating down the road.
Yeah, like, isn't it kind of a thing they use to have, I guess, dialogue between her and her brother and Julian and all of them sometimes?
I don't think it happens as much as you think, but yes, they definitely do reuse animation from that. Like, especially, like, there's the scene where Sakura catches one of the barrier poles that keeps the traffic from driving into that, like, area. Like, she catches that and swings around it. Like, they reuse that all the time. So there's elements of her skating that are used, but I think the moment of her, like, skating down, it's at that lower angle and she's looking up at the trees. Like, I think that's used, like, twice. Once in this one, and then I think when season 2 begins, it's actually slightly later spring, so those pink Sakura are past their pink phase and they're in green.
And we're introduced to Madison, who we talked about a little bit already. And I had a note here that her voice is very specific in the Nelvana dub. So is Sakura's, though, in a different way. And I like both of them a lot. I think they both hit really well.
Oh, yeah. I definitely already gushed over Madison's voice already by Maggie Blue O'Hara.
Yeah.
Who I think, if I have this right, I think her and Sakura's actor, Carly McKillop, they were both They were both kids at the time. Like Carly McKillop is only a year older than I am. So she was like 11 or 12 when she recorded for Sakura. Maggie Blue might have been a little older.
Wow.
Yeah, but like some people have actually commented like that Sakura's voice is too deep in the dub. It doesn't sound like a 10-year-old. It would kind of blow your mind to know that Carly McKillop was like 11 years old when she recorded that.
I believe it.
So you know what? She sounds exactly like a 10-year-old because it
Well,
was
I
a
think some
child.
people, yeah, and I think people who don't work like in this, I don't know, like what an industry that has kids around,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, when you're not, and if you don't have kids of your own, I think people forget what actual kids are really like. And I don't know a lot of 10-year-olds that I've encountered who have like extremely high-pitched, giggly, bubbly voices. Like that would have been unrealistic, if you ask me.
No, absolutely.
I mean, when I first watched the show, I was their age.
Mhm.
So it didn't strike me as an 11-year-old as odd at the time, if that makes sense
Yeah,
either.
yeah, totally.
So yeah, there is a little bit of that aspect of it too. And I think they did such a good job editing those relationships out as well that I didn't really pick up on the fact that they existed in the Nelvana
Yes,
either.
in the Nelvana dub, they're actually yeah, they're almost entirely gone. Although like one of the things I was going to comment on is like rewatching with Sakura skating next to Tori and Julian. That Sakura's dialogue in both versions, it's very clear that Sakura has a crush on Yukito or Julian. But the American dialogue actually seemed to play it up more, or it might just be a difference in, it might just be a cultural difference in how, you know, in English, Americanized dialogue, it's going to be more overt, whereas in Japanese, it's going to be more subtle. Like it's really the same level of attraction, just expressed different ways because of different cultural attitudes.
I think you're actually probably spot on with that,
Yeah.
because it is a little more of an American style to be bigger about your feelings
Mm-hmm.
than in a lot of other places. They're a little more buttoned up, and it's like almost seen as rude to, depending on where you are, to be, I guess,
It might have
however about it.
Yeah, it might have also just caught me off because it's like in the sub, I believe she's basically talking about Yukito as a person. He's a nice guy and listens to her. And over in America, the Nelvana dub, it's more vapid because she's just going on about how cute he is. So it's like it's a difference between like liking someone for who they are and liking someone for superficial reasons. Like maybe that's what caught
That,
me
and
off.
then, although it also to me plays up a really common thing that happened and probably still happens, which is like the girl who is however many years younger than her brother having
Mm-hmm.
a crush on her brother's clearly homosexual friend. because because the gay guys are always nice to the girls in a way that straight guys just are not. And so before girls figure out how to like suss that out for themselves back in that time when it
Right.
wasn't so open, that was probably a really common thing actually to happen for a lot of young girls where they'd be like crushing on the Julian of their life or whatever, the situation was. That might be why they played that up too. Although he was just supposed to be the cute friend, not the cute gay friend in their version.
I yeah, I mean, I it's hard to say exactly. Like, Clamp have been on record as saying that this was a series that they tried to present as many different relationships as possible because they wanted to show all of that representation, which meant, they not only had a lot of, well, comparatively, a lot of gay representation, comparatively, but that also did mean that they had a bunch of other relationships that people rag on the series now for as inappropriate. The I believe the story does declare straight up that like Sakura and Julian were supposed to be an item originally, like that, or at least that
Oh,
was,
really?
or at least that was the in universe uh, expectation, was that they were going to get together because of how Julian is revealed to be UA later.
Right.
Like that was the in universe thing. I don't know if that was ever Clamp's actual intention, but it's fairly clear from some of the early parts of the manga that they were definitely fussing around with a couple of different ideas of where they wanted things to go. Like there are hints that like there's the obvious hint, of course, that Tomoyo was into Sakura, but at the same time, there were also at least one chapter that hinted that Tomoyo might be into Tori, or Toya. I'm gonna mix up these names so much.
That's how it's gonna be interchangeable. That's just
Um,
gotta be how it
like
is.
I'm gonna try and keep it straight. Where like when I'm talking about the manga or the sub, I'm gonna keep their Japanese names. If I'm talking about Nelvana, I'm gonna try and use their Nelvana names.
Right.
But oh, it's gonna happen.
It's hard.
It's going to get mixed up. But
Um, Go on though.
no, I think that was the end of that thought. So like I said, there was definitely some playing with who was going to end up with who really early on before I think they had really hammered out exactly how things were going to go.
Yeah, I mean, and it's part of the creative process. There was a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of, I don't think they ever played around with who was going to end up with who, but there was like in Sailor Moon, there's the thing where Mars, her character,
Mm-hmm.
dates Tuxedo Mask's human form for a while in the
Yep.
beginning before he gets with Moon. And so I mean, they like to mess around, I think, and it's a little more realistic if it's not as straightforward too, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely, yeah, and it's just super common in shoujo manga to begin with that like
Yeah.
you're going to have those crushes and love stories. Like, I mean,
Yes.
it's typical magical girl setup really all throughout the 80s and early 90s. The actual like trope setter series basically all had the main heroine crushing on an older guy. That was just like the most common setup.
Yeah, it was. And it's in a lot of other animes, there's a lot of that stuff too, and people just kind of pick and choose when to have a problem with things.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things. Take the good, you take the bad with it, right? It is what it is.
Exactly, it's like it's anime, you're gonna get all sorts of things.
Yeah,
That's why we're here.
right. And we're here to kind of help make sense of it because I know some of those relationships are explained in a way that we'll get into later
Yeah.
that definitely eased my mind about it a
Hmm.
little, and it helps make it even less creepy than if we weren't already just inherently sexualizing something for no reason. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I remember when my sister finally opened my eyes a little bit to like because I'd loved this series for a long time, and then at sometime around the time I was in college, so I'd already liked this series for 10 years and I'd watched it and read it many times. Then my sister finally opened my eyes to just how weird some of the setups were that I was just like not acknowledging.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so absolutely, just to give you a sense of where my brain was at the time, like how long it took before, like, and how well I think, by the way, the series really makes the relationships okay and palatable, because like if it's not jumping out at you,
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like it's the main
it really
concern.
isn't, and that's one of the things that like people always say about the series, like, oh wow, it's so good for representation and love and everything. I was like, it kind of isn't, or at least it's not about that. It's like it's good for
Yeah.
it in the sense that it exists, but it exists as just background. It's not important. Like, we'll
Well, that's to me, because I don't know, I don't want to assume, anything about you, but for
right.
me, if I am looking for that kind of representation, I prefer that style where it is not at the forefront. We are
Hmm.
just happen to be in that world too, because that's how it is in real life. I don't understand this thing where it's like that's all our identity is. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
I don't function that way. I can't function that way. So when I see like in Sailor Moon and other animes, it does seem to be more like that, unless it is like a yaoi or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Well, those are a completely different thing.
Yeah. But
Honestly, I consider Clamp to be like complete, like Clamp's worlds to be asexual entirely. Like they're like babies are born by stork in Clamp universe. There actually is no sexuality.
and I like that. There's
Oh,
nothing
totally.
wrong with that. So well, let's keep going through the episode.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
it's easy to get distracted. You
So
might have to rearrange some of these
oh,
conversations a little.
absolutely.
But well, let's get into the baton twirling
Oh sure.
because we see that, and that's one of my favorite things about. I love that they made that part of her character because it gives her the fact that she like spins her card captors thing the way she does, a
Mm-hmm.
personal connection to who she is, rather than just like in Sailor Moon, she can just kind of do that
Yeah,
magically, you know?
yeah. It was a good bit of character work to give her to give her something that would tie into her already existing skill set.
Yeah. And it helps set up that she's already a little athletic too.
Totally. As long as it's not a winter sport, Sakura is very athletic.
Yeah, which is the whole, and it's a very common trope with female lead characters a lot of time to make them clumsy and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't feel like they did that with her at all.
No, they really didn't. For the most part, Sakura is a pretty well-rounded, normal, like average girl. Like where the only thing that she really excels at is athletics. She is, as far as I can tell throughout the series, she's perfectly average at academics. She hates math like anyone else, but they don't go into a lot of detail about any of her other subjects. But she's never made out to be like a bad student. She's just kind of like,
There is that music episode with the recorder.
oh yes, of course.
I remember that, of course.
The thing that we all had to do as children. Oh,
A thing that I've had to
oh, that
teach.
is awful.
Uh,
I have
yeah, room
I have
full
all
of
the sympathy for you.
anyway, there's a whole other show. But yeah, no, I like that her character is that way, and it almost instills a lot of trust in her right away, kind
Mhm.
of that because you see a lot of this later in the episode. Her athletic ability comes out when she doesn't really have that much. Like all she has is the one card, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but let's go into she gets home from school.
Yep.
That's like the next scene. And she hears something and she like that she took her baton down into the
It's like,
basement. That was her.
I don't think that's a great. I don't think that would make a particularly good weapon. Granted, I have actually been hit by those before, so like they're certainly distracting. Um,
Well, I was gonna say, what if she just starts twirling it to distract whatever it is and then get away?
maybe,
That was her idea.
maybe. I was surprised going through this scene that the dialogue was actually basically word for word from the Japanese. Like they barely changed it.
That's good.
Yeah, it's like there's occasional times where like they'll go way off. I'd say off script, but like they go way off from the Japanese version. Other times they played it completely straight,
Yeah.
like just
I
complete translation.
they probably were like, we want to make sure we set up the actual important points of the story correctly here.
Yeah, and also like this is the point in the episode where I was watching where the cuts more or less stopped, like the cuts for time that they were making. They
Mhm.
they definitely cut a lot out of the school day to make time, but like from about this point onward, the episode plays more or less at the same pace as the Japanese version.
So we were talking a little bit about the music earlier.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the sound, like the music we would have here, would be different in the Japanese version,
Oh
like the
yeah,
background music?
yeah, Nelvana didn't use any of the they didn't use any of the original soundtrack as far as I can tell.
It's coming from Dad's library. I wish Dad or Tori were here. What if it's a burglar? 今、お兄ちゃんもお父さんもいないのに。
Okay, because the song that kicks in here
Yeah.
is one of my favorite tracks from the background music. It's like isn't it the ba-da-da-dum? It kind of starts like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
I know
I
which one
wrote,
you're thinking of.
yeah, and I wrote, this is just where I made my first note about the music, or the second one maybe. But the
Mhm.
background music is really heavy with strings, specifically lower strings like cello and upright bass.
Yes.
And then, yeah, for people who want to compare, the closest stylistically I can find in my like mental bank is Pirates of the Caribbean.
Mm.
It's very similar in the sense that they use a lot of low sounding strings and a lot of the da 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 da, that whole kind of approach of like it's a percussiveness they use with the bow. And then they get into adding like anytime you throw a little harp, you
Mhm.
automatically have some magic. You know what I mean? Like it just brings a little something extra to it. And they use a lot of interesting sound effects here too
Yeah,
that I really enjoyed.
I think I'm definitely gonna on the next episode we'll definitely pay more attention to the original because like I said, I don't think they used any of the original music, but you're right. I think they maybe were very aware of the original music and replicated it their own way. Like they used
That's I think what they tried to do a lot of the
yeah,
time back then. What is let's talk about this scene a little because it is really important,
sure.
right? What are some things you notice that are important here?
About like the about her exploring the library, finding Kiro, like all of that.
Yeah, that whole like getting the book and all that. Like, what do you want to highlight for people?
I actually really want to highlight how much I love Matt Hill as Kiro.
Hmm.
Like I totally get how the surfer bro voice could be off-putting, but I don't think I ever truly appreciated how into the role Matt Hill is when he's voicing this character. He captures little Kiro's energy exactly the same way. The especially like the scene where he and Sakura are explaining, it's like, oh, my cards, where are they? It's like, you mean this one? It's like, oh yeah, that one. Where's the rest? And they just keep going back and forth, and it's perfect energy. Like they translated the scene perfectly over, and Carly's performance of it is great. Like they're both they do it really well. Like I loved that moment.
The thing I wrote down about that was I wrote him coming out of the book was one of my favorite moments from the whole episode
Yeah.
because he looks really cool and epic and
Mm-hmm.
important, and then immediately is a complete dork and is
Yeah,
not at
exactly.
all intimidating.
Yeah, with the camera pan in and out, and like which is not added to Nelvana. That's how it was in the original too.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up his voice because the first time I tried to go back and watch this, I would say maybe it's a year ago already. The whatever clip I watched,
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, it was like a lot of him just yelling in that episode, and I don't know why.
He does yell quite a bit.
He does. And I think that one just had like the most of it somehow because I completely forgot that was his voice. And when I heard it, I was like, I don't think I like this. And then going back and actually watching through this first episode again and having him do all these different levels, I'm
Mhm.
hearing what you're talking about
Yeah,
exactly.
and because see, this is the thing where I don't know. I know that the airing order was obviously weird, but I don't know if the production order was weird. So I don't know if this was their 20th episode or if this was their first episode. I really want to assume the series was dubbed in order, like all at once basically, and then was just cut up and aired weirdly. But yeah, I have no idea. I can't really tell. Like,
Well, are the
I,
same cuts in the one that was aired overseas?
yes, it's all
That
the
is
same.
Nelvana.
It is all the same Nelvana dub. So it's the same. It's the same episodes, mostly the same recordings. There are some episodes that do have alternate takes at the end of certain episodes. Like when we get to episode, I believe it's 6, the museum episode. There is actually an alternate take for Lee's first line, based off of whether
Oh.
you're watching the Australian episode or whether you're watching the North American episode.
Do we have both?
I do have both.
Okay,
I'm
cool,
quite
cool.
sure.
Because that's another
I'm quite sure I have
interesting
both.
thing. It's such a weird mystery as to why it was handled in such like a haphazard way.
Yeah, I'm trying to reach out to some of the people who are hopefully involved in the production because I want to understand why this series was the way it was.
And that's part of the goal of this project is to hopefully get that and some of these answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about is the Cloud book itself.
Sure.
The design is really cool. I've always did they is it is the text in English on the book in the Japanese version as well? Because I know sometimes they use English
I don't
text.
think it's English. Well, I think it's maybe some kind of faux Latin. Um, uh, yeah, I think most of the times you see that inner page, it's mostly just scribbly lines. I'm not sure
But it
offhand.
says Clow on the
Oh yeah,
spine.
yeah, that part. That's all still the same. It's all.
Okay,
It always
okay.
says the clow or the clo is apparently how it's actually supposed to be pronounced. I've said clow
Really?
for
That's
years.
right.
I've said clow for years because that's how Card Captors pronounces it. But in Japanese, it's actually klo, like kuro. It's kuro card. Uh, so it's supposed to be like klo, like glow, blow.
They say Clow in the
clo.
show though.
Yeah, in the Nelvana dub they say clow, But
Oh, that's what. Don't
right,
they say Clow in the Japanese?
nope,
I swear they
it's
do.
supposed to be pronounced Clo.
Are you sure that's just not an accent?
No, it's definitely like it's written out in kana as Kuro.
Oh, they have a pronunciation
Yeah,
like,
it's
okay,
definitely
fair enough.
written out. Uh, like this is the thing is like well, Japanese does have that ow sound, but no, it is definitely written Kuro Kado, so it's definitely supposed to be like that.
That's interesting.
Just like how Kiro's name is Keroberos, even though it's written Cerberus as I've always written it, until you understand that in Greek the C sound is a K, so
Yeah, but then
that
someone's going to say it's Cerberus.
yeah, it's
And there's
Keroberos.
all the difference of vowels. That's
But
what's going
it
to. Keepers of the Cloud will be right back. And now we return to Keepers of the Cloud.
Yeah, so I mean, like the Nelvana pronunciations were always interesting. I mean, that's why you have like I say Sakura the Japanese way, but in English, she's Sakura or Sakura or some variation of that, depending.
Sakura.
Yeah, depending on who's saying it. Like
I'm
Kiro,
probably going to use a Nelvana pronunciation
oh,
most of the
definitely,
time.
yeah. Like Kiro, I think always says Sakura. He puts an O in there. It's
That's his surfer thing, though, I think.
yeah. Whereas Madison says Sakura.
What did you think about Wendy as the choice for the card that she gets first, technically?
I think it's a very I think it's a very good card for her because it's for better or worse, it's a card that is it's strong enough to get the point across, but it's completely non-violent and like non-damaging. So it's used. It's very in line with Sakura's efforts and personality, where she wants to get the job done but doesn't want to hurt anyone or anything. So like the Windy
Hmm.
card is a very good non-violent card for her to use.
I
It's
actually never thought about it as nonviolent, but I guess you're right, it
Oh,
is.
it is definitely a non-violent card. Like she uses it several times to try and. I mean, she gets in trouble for that in the Final Judgment when she tries to use it against Yue because it's like it won't hurt him. The problem is that Yue has control of it, so not only will it not hurt him generally, it also just physically can't hurt him because he won't allow it. So
Right.
it's like it's her go-to card, but it's not perfect. Uh, it's covered later that like Windy, despite being an elemental card, is like the gentlest of the cards. So like she's like I said, it's a very good card for Sakura to have because it would be a very different show if like Fiery was her original card.
Yeah, well, I wanted to know why they picked that one for her, and that explanation makes perfect sense. It fits her personality very well. I'm glad you pointed out that it wasn't violent, because to me, I'm so trained. Oh, it's a wind spell. I see it making the thing stop moving. That's technically an attack. But I
Mm-hmm.
guess the way that it does things in general is even when it's getting something to like be captured, it kind of gently stops whatever's going on.
Yeah, it's a binding spell basically for her.
Yeah.
It's not properly an attack spell. It's not purely defensive. But yes, it's definitely more non-hostile because like Sakura is not a she's not a hostile character throughout the entire series.
Hmm.
Like she's like Sakura is not only not a hostile character, she's not even that proactive in some ways. Like you get into that in the episode where she is very much refusing the call of the hero when she's being told like you have to be the card captor. I don't want to be the card captor. Well, you left the cards out of the book, therefore you are the card captor.
It's like kind of the ship has sailed.
Yeah, she and to be honest, like throughout the series, as much as Sakura like likes the cards, it's also very clear that like she's doing this out of obligation, not because she wants magical powers. Like she's the only magical girl that I've ever really seen who is given these fantastical powers and for the most part does not care. It's like it's very much every card is like cool, I captured the card, put it in the book and go on pretending to be normal.
Well, and it's funny because I think that is almost a very realistic way to handle it because the amount of overwhelming information that would be coming at her at that age, I
Hmm.
think the only way to handle it would be to compartmentalize it. And it's like when I am doing that thing, then I'll be all about that. But when I'm not, I cannot be thinking about that all the time, or I will absolutely go crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very true. Like, she's good at using the cards when the situation calls for it, but she's not someone who, like, other magical girls, when they're handed their spells, like, they'll try to use it in their regular life, but Sakura basically never does. There's only a couple of occasions where she ever tries to use magic for something outside of capturing a card, and I think those times are mostly her casting the flower card to be a peacekeeping thing. Like, she uses her magic for other people. She never uses magic for herself.
I like that aspect of her
Yeah,
character
she's
too.
very she's very responsible with it.
She is. Also, them choosing Wendy allowed them to, it was kind of one of the only choices that would make the cards being scattered
Hmm.
actually make a lot of sense too. And I think the way they animate that scene is really cool. It's one of the most well-known, probably,
Yeah, it's
I
it's
would
an
guess.
iconic moment of, like, seeing them just, like, fly out of the book and then just shooting off into the sky, like, with as little laser lights. Like, yeah, it's a great way of scattering it in the anime, as opposed to in
Yeah,
the manga, where the story is actually a little different, where the cards were pre-hidden, like, years ago for her to find. So it's a little different setup in the manga.
that is different. I actually
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah, in the anime, it's I think it's more dramatic that she released them, and that's why it makes it more personal for her too. Like, because in the manga, they basically are like, yeah, cool, you found the book, congratulations, you get to collect the cards now. It's like a prize that she didn't want to win. Whereas in the anime, there's at least a level of personal responsibility on her. It's like, congratulations, you found the book and let the cards out. You have to go get those back, please.
I don't know. I like the way it happens in the show. I think it's cute
Yeah,
that
it's
she's
less of a
sort it's
it's less
kind
of
of
a
her
request.
fault.
Yeah.
I think I've read the manga, but I'm having because I was sitting here like that sounds familiar, but I
Mhm.
don't know it that well, and I was trying to figure out why,
I've
and I
I've
remembered
only read
why.
the manga a few times, but
Well, I never purchased it, but it's kind of long, isn't it?
um it's it, it's 12 issues, but I wouldn't necessarily call it what I wouldn't call it is dense.
Well,
Because
what I'll say is that's a lot of issues to purchase
yeah,
for
it
me
is.
at that age.
Oh yeah, yeah, fair enough. It's
So like yeah, the way I read it was sitting in Barnes and Noble with my friend on the weekend, and we would
mhm.
just get a stack of manga, sit in those comfy chairs, and read all day. And like that's where I read it. I That's why I don't have it though, and that's why I don't remember it that well because I was in a store.
I have like 4 copies of it in different languages.
Speaking of, we were talking about Kuro earlier
Sure.
a little bit. But just a little more on his character. I like compared to other animes where there is a mentor
Mhm.
person or animal or whatever it is. He's a lot more goofy than a lot of them are. He seems both together and not at the same time, which I think makes him a different kind of mentor, I guess, in a way. And I also really like that Sakura is not afraid to challenge him like right from the start.
No, he definitely doesn't command respect in that regard. Like, he clearly knows what he's talking about, and yet he's very flippant and uh, not necessarily truly focused, which is why, again, I think the Surfer Bro voice that Matt Hill gives him is actually very appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
Al-
I think he does a great job bringing that
Yeah, although I don't think
that out.
I don't think Matt Hill has too many different voices either. 'Cause if you're familiar with Ed, Ed and Eddie, he's
Yeah,
he's Ed. Like,
really?
that's
Which one?
him. He's the tall unibrow Ed. That's Matt Hill.
Oh, that is so funny. I used to watch that
I,
so much.
I can hear him there. He has a slightly different
Like,
performance style there, but yes, it's the same guy.
I love that we have Ed and Eddie crossover though. I used to watch. It's the same. Well, it was Cartoon Network, so
Yeah,
you
and
know.
Cardcaptors was actually briefly on Cartoon Network.
Card Captors, Monday, June 4th at 5.
I thought it was on Toonami for a little bit.
Yeah, it was on there for like I think it only made it about 6 months. I think they managed to
Yeah.
play the entire series once and then pulled it. We've
I
been
don't know
talking
how
about
much
Kiro
they
for a
say
while.
about this, but Who is Clow Reed and what do we learn about him in this episode?
We learn very little about Chloe Reed overall. Throughout the series, all you really ever get to learn much about him is that he was a powerful magician. He created the Clo cards, and then so this is a slight change in the Nelvana dub, in that they kind of make the Clow cards out to be far more malicious than they really are.
Hmm.
The Nelvana dub basically paints them as Clow Reed made these cards. They were a new kind of magic that have a personality of their own, and they ended up being so dangerous that he locked them in a book to protect the world. That's not really the tone that the sub goes with. The cards were just sealed in the book because that's how he decided to pass them on to Sakura, very indirectly. So that is one of kind of the big thematic changes between the sub and the dub, is that card captors really kind of makes the Clow cards falling into Sakura's hands more of an accident than it was in the original story.
We get to see our first Cloud card out in the wild,
Yes, fly.
which, yeah, is a very exciting moment. I think the Fly card being the first card chosen was a really good choice,
Mm-hmm.
because its true form is sort of intimidating and scary. So we have that aspect of
That's a
it.
giant bird.
Yeah, but it's also a card that I think if it came later in the season, it would have been easily buried and not interesting.
Probably. There's definitely ways that she could deal with it easier. I think probably one of the biggest reasons why it was first is because it is her main mobility card throughout the entire series.
Well,
They,
that's the other.
yeah, they wanted
Yeah.
to give her that. I mean, granted, it's also the very first card she captures in the manga, so they kept that one as, or rather, it's the first card we see her capturing in real time, not counting flashbacks. So I think there was probably some effort with that too. But yes, I believe it was definitely a case of they wanted to give her this mobility ability really early, so they gave her the fly card like immediately.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting to the way that when she's dealing with the fly card, she's in her rollerblades still, right?
Yeah.
Like in the morning. Doesn't she have her pajamas on at this point?
Yes,
But
she
then
makes a big deal of it that she.
yes, and she has her they're called wrist guards
Hmm.
and her knee pads on though
Yeah,
over the pajamas.
safety first,
I love
except
that
helmet.
detail.
Like,
As a kid whose parents made them wear all of that crap
mm-hmm.
when they went out on rollerblades, and I looked absolutely crazy. I'm glad they did. I fell so much.
Yeah, no,
Um,
they're definitely great. But like I said, that's the interesting thing. Like she wears all that, but not a helmet. Despite that, we mentioned earlier how old dubbing sometimes would cut scenes of a person riding a bike without a helmet on. So
that is
rollerblades,
true.
okay to not wear a helmet. Bike, absolute cardinal sin if you have no helmet on.
I bet you anything I know exactly how they got away with it because rollerblades were like a new thing when I was a
Mm,
kid. And I guarantee you there were laws about bikes and there were probably laws about roller skates. They were probably not laws yet about rollerblades.
yeah, that might be. Which granted, it's a good thing she's really good on those rollerblades because
Yeah.
I want to talk about the when she gets up on fly and she has to do that. She has to do that like full 180 up a wall.
I was
Um,
going to ask what that was.
well, all she does is she just skates up the like 45-degree incline on the road, and then just jumps. And I would very much like a pro skater's feedback on that trick because that is probably the most involved thing she ever does in the series on rollerblades, and she just pulls it off without a hitch. It's a top level skate trick that I'm not even sure is possible.
I agree with you. I would love to hear about that from a professional skater or just anyone who's really good at Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 for the N64.
Especially
Probably.
because also I think that wall was not a flat wall. I'm pretty sure it had. If I go back to the
It
scene,
has
I'm,
it's stones.
yeah, it's stones and like divots in there. Like it's not a flat surface.
Well,
She
that's
could
why I
have
wanted
rolled
to
up.
ask you what it was because I'm not used to seeing walls like that along roads, at least where I live.
No,
So I
they're
was like, what
very
is that?
they're a very Japanese thing. I think they're just used to when they cut into the road and then they put a layer of concrete there to deal with the erosion and keep
Oh, that makes
the
sense.
thing of the road. So I'm pretty sure that's all that is it's just a feature. It's a common feature of Japanese roadway architecture. Um, but also definitely not rated for skating as far as I'm concerned. But
No, that would be really hard to actually pull off in real life. And then also, just the actual bravery to get on a bird like that, which we
mm-hmm.
knew it goes up in the sky. So then she can't fly yet. So
No,
she's now stuck on the back of this thing. Doesn't she throw the windy card while she's up on it?
yeah, her first cast, and it she kind of channels that first term superhero thing where like you just got your powers, you instinctively know how certain things work, even though
Yeah.
by all rights you're flying around on this bird. You think throwing a card is the best idea with the wind whipping past you like this, like that card's gone. But no, it just
Right.
she throws it out in front of her. It just kind of lazily floats in striking range of her wand. So she just kind
Yeah.
of counted on that to work out well.
She got lucky there, but also I love the way they animated that. I thought
Yeah,
it was cool.
yeah, and
And
it shows off Wendy's non-violent tendency of just I'm just going to wrap up this bird and cause it to violently crash into the town, and also literally no one's going to notice an enormous bird crashing into the town and causing God knows how much damage.
we gotta actually, that brings up a good question too. But before I ask that, just back to Wendy.
Yeah.
Um, what did I want to say about Wendy here? Oh, the way, so, and this is not just specific to Wendy, but I always notice it the most
Hmm.
with her. There's something about the cloud card animation specifically that's very glowy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they achieve that because it's not like, oh, they just drew a little light around it. Maybe that's what they do, but there's something that with the way they do sound effects that's very, very specific and
Mm.
doesn't feel like any other anime to me. And it's like it applies to almost all of the cloud card summoning that she does. Do you have
I'm
any idea what I'm talking about?
I think I do. I don't know in animation how you achieve that glow effect, other than I'm pretty sure it's just another layer of cell that you produce that glow effect on. Um, but unfortunately, I don't know enough about technical animation to really explain how that effect is produced.
That
Uh,
makes sense. That's fair enough. I
yeah,
was just curious what we know about it. But if anyone else has picked up on that and you know what I'm talking about and wants to comment on it, I
yeah.
guess go ahead.
Any classic animator, I'm sure, can tell you how to do that. Because as far as I know, the show used little to no computer
Hmm.
for at least the TV anime. I believe the first and second movies may have used a little computer power for some animation, but for the most part, I think Sakura was done uh, entirely analog.
Probably,
Yeah,
just based on the time period and everything.
yeah. So like
Um,
I said, I don't know how that effect is made, but I know that it was made completely conventionally.
yeah, it's probably one of those things that I'm missing from new stuff too. I don't know,
Hmm.
but anyway, so like you were saying, we see Windy kind of wrap itself around the bird and it gently falls out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
It can't move, and then she captures her first card, which is the fly card.
Yep.
And do we want to do just an overview of the fly card in general?
I've we could. There's not too much to say about it. It's all it is it does what it says on it. It lets you fly. Uh, she uses it attached to her wand for the entire first story arc before it changes form later. But it's very useful to create that iconic witch image of
Hmm.
flying around on a broomstick. She's just flying around on a stick with wings that come out the back.
Yeah, instead of the broom, whatever you call it, bristles or
Hmm.
whatever sweepy part, she has the little wings on the end. I thought that was one of those things I immediately noticed about the show too, though, because I was expecting her to just summon a bird.
Right.
And then when it was that, I was like, oh, that's even more cute because that, again, it's like a specific aesthetic to her.
Hmm.
And the cards kind of function based on her. They probably wouldn't do that if it wasn't her. It would be something different if it was someone
Yeah,
else.
it seems like the way the Clo cards work is that you can either summon the spirit, and the spirit, has the powers that go along with it, or you can just summon a certain effect, which is what you get with fly. So like there's no practical reason to ever summon the bird. But you can summon the wings to fly with. So that's generally how it works.
Yeah.
As opposed to like Windy, where in theory she could probably just project wind out of the card if she wanted to, but no, she always sends the Windy card itself. Like
Yeah.
the whole thing.
And we get our first, well, we see it. So she captures the card.
Mm-hmm.
She has this moment where she like doesn't really think she wants to do this.
That's like fair. It's totally
Right.
normal reaction.
And then Kiro's like, just try the card. And then she does. And that's when we see the witch broom thing.
Yeah, and that kind of immediately turns her around because it's like, oh my god, that was so scary. I don't want to ever do that again. It's like, but have you tried and see what the card does now? It's like, oh wow, I could fly. Yeah, if you keep capturing cards, you get other cool abilities.
Yeah, that would definitely give me motivation to keep going and make me feel a lot more secure.
Yeah.
Because I would be like, well, now I guess I don't have to worry about being like stuck up in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So that would take a big, intimidation factor out of it. And that's the episode, and then we get Kiro's Corner the first time.
We do. It's which is interesting. I was surprised to get those because the North American dub cut those out entirely. We never got them. You just got the credits, and then you're done. The show's done. But the PAL region gave us the Kiro's Corners, which unfortunately means I don't think I have all of them. I only have the ones that I have the PAL rips for. Mm-hmm. The North American dub usually would replace the Kiro's Corner with just a next time on Card Captors, or just not even a next time. It would just be like a scene where it would just show the Cloud Book opening, and it would show a random card from an episode that you probably didn't get to see in the Nelvana dub. So it was basically their opportunity to show clips of episodes that probably weren't going to be aired.
They kind of took a weird, like, that combined with what Pokemon is that, remember the, guess that Pokemon thing that they used to do? It was probably them taking a note from that combined with the Sailor Says thing that happened, and they were just like, let's do a segment. And that's what they ended up going with. So the Kiro's Corner from the version that we watched, which is the Nelvana dub, but the PAL version. So, and we're doing that so everybody knows, just so we have the complete thing.
Yep.
What happens in it?
So it's the exact same one as in the sub. So as far as I know, they don't mix them up. It's just the Kiro chance to talk about usually the costume of the day, but in this case, since we didn't get a costume, he just talked about the Readington Elementary, that's the name of the school, uniform. And he does this weird thing that I made a note of, that said that Sakura personalized her uniform with the wing badge on the arm, which is wrong, because that's just the logo on the school. It's such a weird change in the dialogue that they made.
That is sort of weird. The only thing I noticed is that he commented on how she captured the card in her pajamas.
That too, yes.
I thought that was funny.
I've never seen someone capture a card in their pajamas. Well, Kiro, you've never seen someone capture a card before either.
Well, and you never will again, because apparently Madison has a sweatshop in her basement and is able to churn out a new outfit in 5 seconds, every day.
Well, in the next episode, you actually see that she just has a ton of them pre-made already.
Where did they come from?
She just makes them.
Okay, sure.
Tomoyo has no hobbies other than making clothes, and she makes clothes specifically for Sakura.
People have all kinds of hobbies. Why not?
Yeah,
it's a little weird that she started making clothes for her before she was a superhero.
See, that's the interesting part, is that she was making these costumes before that. But yes,
I think I know why, but we can get into that later.
Maybe. I don't know if the manga never, I don't think, really delves into it, because again, the manga starts kind of already in the story. But in the anime, Tomoyo Madison finds out, and then the following night, she's already got a van full of costumes.
That is so funny.
I mean, she is rich. Maybe she does have a sweatshop in her basement.
That's right, she is. She might. We don't know. So something I think we should do each week. The reason I do this on Moonstar is because I think it just adds something to it, but it also gives people listening something to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should rate each episode out of five.
Ooh.
So we do 5 stars over there. We can say moon stars over there. We can call it stars here. We can call it star cards. I don't know. We
Well,
can give it some
stars
fun.
are very on brand for Sakura.
I figured. Um, we can call them Sakura stars if you want. But whatever. How would you rate this episode out of five?
To be honest, I would give this a 5. This is a perfect setup for the series itself. It does a good job of introducing the main character, a couple of the side characters who will be more important later. It gives you a good setup of the stakes of the series, even the modified stakes of the Nelvana dub. By, as I said, it makes the Clo cards more malicious than they really are. But yeah, I think this, even as the dub version, I think it stands up perfectly well as a starting episode.
Yeah, I gave it 5 out of 5 too. I think it's a really strong introduction, just like you were saying. And yeah, they set up the characters in a way that makes you want to know more about them, and I feel like you get enough to be interested, but it doesn't feel drawn out
Mm-hmm.
at all. And I thought, like we were talking about earlier too, Sakura, even though she is not she doesn't necessarily feel her age, she still feels really relatable
Yeah.
because she handles a lot of situations that I feel like a way that it's like kind of an across the board, a lot of people might react in that way. She just kind of has a little more bravery in the end about it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, like the physical attributes that athletes probably possess that most of us don't. So like she has that bonus too. But then I also thought Kiro comes off really well in this episode. And it was interesting to me having that reaction, having seen some random other middle one and not liking his
Mm-hmm.
portrayal that much. And then seeing this one, and I was like, oh, I actually really love it a
Yeah,
lot.
I think like any series, there's going to be people who have bad performance days, and you probably got to see some of his lesser performances. 'Cause this
Yeah.
episode was definitely one of his better ones.
Yeah. And I also really liked the choice of Wendy as her first card for the same reasons we mentioned earlier.
Mm.
But I think having a card like that be the first one gives just enough of that elemental magic to where if that is something that's sort of like one of the things you look for, you know it's going to be there from the start,
Right.
you know? And then yeah, and the fly card we already talked about. It was a great choice too for a first capture. I think it's a really strong intro episode overall.
It is.
Period.
Like in either version, it's a really good intro.
Yeah. Well, that's it for One Fateful Day. Did I say it right?
Yeah, I think it's one fateful day, not a fateful day like I thought it was. It's one fateful day.
And then Sakura and the Mysterious Magic Book. If you guys want to follow the Japanese, I mean, watch whatever you want, really.
It's like,
As you
well,
listen to it.
to be honest, like we'll go like we've established, like the Japanese version is far more easy to see than the Nelvana version because
Yeah.
it was a challenge to find all of the Nelvana version, and as much as I would like to make it available to everyone, I'm pretty sure that would be some kind of copyright problem. I'm gonna not test my luck with that.
No,
though.
we're not. But there are ways for people to find it if they do want to. What is the actual easiest way if we're talking legally, like as in purchasing the physical DVD or a VHS? What do you suggest?
Well, the
people
only
do?
the only legal way to watch it in the strictest sense would be to go on eBay and find old VHSs. But unfortunately, the VHSs only go up to like episode 21 or 24, I think. They cut the line off, so you can't even watch the original full 35 episodes. If people in the PAL regions are able to find full sets, but I have never seen full sets of card captors over there at all. The English, like the Great Britain cuts that I have only go up to also episode about 21, but it's like the Card Captor Sakura run episode 21. There's only like 4 volumes of that. The Australian VHSs that I have, there's only 3 of them, so that only covers 12 episodes. I am entirely unaware as of yet where you can possibly see the entire Nelvana dub without going on YouTube and trying to piece it together the way I did.
That
and
might be what they have to do for now.
and I don't
I
think
would
anyone's put
say,
the whole thing up in order.
yeah, you might have to grab individual volumes wherever you can find them. Do they have a DVD release anywhere?
There was a DVD release that went along with the VHSs, but it cuts off at exactly the same time. They were coming out at that time because this was 2001, so that was right at the VHS DVD cutoff.
Yeah.
And I believe what happened, and this is purely speculation on my part, but the Card Captors sets weren't selling well. So Pioneer, the people who owned the distribution rights to it, just cut their losses and decided to start releasing the series uncut on DVD instead. So that's where the Pioneer VHS and DVD line of the same of Cardcaptor Sakura began. Basically, like Cardcaptors prematurely ended so that Pioneer could just start putting out the raw uncut videos.
That's so wild. And do you know if the PAL DVDs, did they ever complete the whole series?
I have not. I've never seen PAL. I don't think I've ever seen PAL DVDs at all. I just seen VHSs, and the only time that I've gotten any messaging at all was when I reached out to Madman in Australia, and they said that they had no plans to release the Nelvana dub of Cardcaptors. So
Boo.
yeah, as of now, I know of no way to obtain legitimate copies of the Nelvana Cardcaptors, despite my offerings to studios that I will pay for those recordings. Like I will do it. I've got that money, but so far no one's been willing to like give me a Dropbox to like the HD cuts.
Fortunately, I think that does, don't quote me on this, and nobody use this as a reference because I am not saying for sure. But I think the fact that it is so basically impossible to find means that if people were to find it some other way, the likelihood of them being targeted is probably fairly low. I would imagine.
Maybe.
That's a big
think,
maybe.
I just think they want to bury it. It's like because
I think so too.
It just didn't do well, and no one like the studio doesn't. Like I said, Nelvana's defunct. I think, and the fan base just doesn't like it. And so, despite hopefully our effort to turn that around and maybe make Cardcaptors more palatable, that would be a great thing to get one of these studios that actually still does own the rights to it to be like, maybe we will do a limited DVD release, because I guarantee you, studios, I will be first in line to slap money on your table and say, give me those DVDs.
Or maybe they'll put it on a streaming service or something.
Or that. Just give me the raw audio. Well, okay,
what I don't understand is
me,
if
but
give the
raw
yeah, like we have the technology to share it. If people are willing to pay for it, you might as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Well, I never say never. You never know.
Yeah, it'd be great. I could still keep putting feelers out there to studios and be like, look, I know you have this somewhere. Like, give it to me.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a time eventually where stuff like that becomes a historical thing, which we're already moving towards that. And
they recently found that that pilot episode of the American Sailor Moon in the Library of Congress. Like, I wonder if Cardcaptor's in the Library of Congress.
Why was it in the Library of Congress?
Because they archive everything.
I guess they do.
They're right.
Well, I'm sure it must be there. That blows my mind. That's like, so funny.
Shrek is in there. Like, why not?
Why not?
I think I have that right. Like, that's where they found that. That's where they found. They basically found that thing in some kind of national archive of some variety. Like, yeah, maybe all of Cardcaptors. But then again, Cardcaptors was made in Canada, so it would be Canada's version of National Archives.
We can call Canada. No, I'm just kidding.
If someone Canadian can get in touch with their National Film Archives, let's let us know. Let's go down that rabbit hole.
Well, I have always liked Cardcaptors. I also like Cardcaptor Sakura, the original version. Mm-hmm. I hope that this podcast helps people enjoy it a little bit more, because it definitely gave me a lot of great moments as a kid, and I think there are a lot of good qualities to it, along with a lot of the changes that they made that, yeah, of course, I wish they could have been more true to it or whatever, but they just couldn't at the time, and they weren't, and it wasn't. Yeah, so it's like I can boohoo about it, or I can still enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. I think like it sucks that they edited things out, but I think they made a different product that on its own, I think, or at least I hope throughout this series, we can show stands on its own.
Yeah. And it's still worth giving it some attention, even in this day and age, you
If
know?
you can find it, as we've
Yeah.
established, that will be a challenge.
We have reached that part of the show where, if you are following us on the podcast feed, we are branching off into Chris's Corner. So I'm gonna go ahead and just get into it. I'll meet you guys there because I'm part of it. So let's go. Here's the first Chris's Corner. Card Captors is a little weird in the sense that it was reordered.
Right.
Like they jumbled the episode order originally when they aired it, and then later I think it got fixed, so it's a little confusing where we're starting. But you are someone who focuses a lot on art style and animation. Do you want to start by talking about that?
Yeah. So the lead character designer of Cardcaptor Sakura is Kumiko Takahashi, which she started in the 80s, but in terms of anime, she's mostly known for being the lead character designer of this adaptation of CCS and also Ouran High School Host Club in the mid 2000s.
Oh, I can see that. They're
Yeah,
similar.
yeah, and the best, I don't know, like besides her, there were, I think, two other people that were known as the like best character designers for CCS. I don't remember what one of their names are, but one of them is Mariko Fujita. So going through the series, most of all the important episodes in the original series of CCS are all like, it's pretty much guaranteed that one of the three like nicest people did them.
Hey everyone, it's DC Yamato doing the end card. Thank you so much for getting this far. This was the pilot episode, so it was a bit long. These videos will be going up on this channel for now, but soon there will be their own channel for them to go up on, and I'll put a link to that channel when it is made and they move over there. But for now, for the first few episodes, they're going to be here. This is also, again, available in a podcast form with links in the description if that is how you would prefer to experience the series going forward. We're really looking forward to going far in this series. We have all 70 episodes to work with, and I think it's going to be great. Like, comment, and subscribe, and now here's Chris's Corner.
What do you think, I guess, stands out about Cardcaptor Sakura when it comes to other, like, magical girl animes?
There's well, just like Sailor Moon, there's a lot of or I guess in Cardcaptor Sakura, there's even more of a gay, heavy theme in it. With obviously it was cut in this English dub of it, but Yukito and Toya having a canon relationship, and just the different elements of the cards and how the cards' abilities affect Sakura's life and school and whatever going on.
Yeah, it's almost like
Yeah.
it's kind of like adds a mystery element to it each week when they're trying to figure out
Yeah.
which card it is and based on what's happening in the city. I
Yeah.
always found that aspect of it really interesting. I also noticed, correct me if I'm wrong, but for animes of that time period, to me, this was the only, quote, girly, and I'm saying that in terms of that time, anime that was focused on, like, collection, whereas the other ones being Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Beyblade, all of that kind of stuff, all the, quote, collected animes were more boy-esque, I guess, or were kind of pushed or marketed in that direction. And I think to me that makes this stand out a little, because I respond to that in things. I like like the Pokemon world and cards and all that, and I like how she has all these different cards to collect and gather, and they all do different things, rather than it
Yep.
being gathering a team of people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
So I definitely think that is something that stands out about it. This episode, she starts with Windy, right? And then
Yep.
what she captures the fly card. Do you have any thoughts about the fly card and like how it's captured or anything?
No, I guess just probably just that it's a good card to start with for the series, since it's something it's something that seems like it would be not that interesting of an ability to have in her regard, but it ends up being obviously, very important.
It ends up being something she uses more than almost anything else.
Yeah.
I love that the monster, it's not even a monster, I guess. The card itself, its quote true form is this huge bird beast, but then when she uses it, it's these wings on the back of her staff, so she's kind of flying around like on a broom, like a witch.
Hmm.
I always notice that where it's like, it's like the cards. How would you describe it? They kind of like temper themselves to her person,
Right.
to her
Yep.
needs or her personality. I love that aspect of it too. Well, this segment's supposed to be pretty short, I guess. Let's just choose a favorite moment from today's episode, if you had to.
Probably just because I remember it so much, and I used to have a cell of Yukito from the scene in the beginning when they're on the way to school together. That's just something that like a scene that I kind of have memorized in my head from the series, just in terms of iconic moments in older anime. And yeah, I used to have a nice cell of Yukito from when Sakura is looking up at him riding his bike, and it's with a friend locally. Like, I sold it to a friend that lives like a half hour from me, so
You can still visit the cell.
yeah.
You have partial ownership. No, that's such a great. Okay, first of all, I agree with you. That part is kind of burned into my mind too, specifically like the whole rollerblading aspect of it. There's something really nostalgic about that. There's something so like sweet about the fact that she rollerblades to school with her brother and his friend. Like, it's so homey and cozy. And then I always thought it was cute how she had a crush on Yukito. In the English, he's called Julian.
Right.
Which was the first time I'd ever heard that name before. And he's the reason I like that name for guys. So congrats to him for that. That's a really iconic cell to get to. Was it expensive?
No, because it was still at the time where, I mean, now certain CCS stuff can be like really expensive, but before COVID, and before the new Card Captor Sakura came out, CCS cells were, known for being almost always super, super affordable, and even stuff that was like really, really, really nice wasn't more than, I don't know, maybe like $300, but a lot of them were like, I remember that cell of Yukito was like 70 originally.
Really?
Yeah.
Wonder, is it still like that, or have the prices gone up?
No, like if you want to if you want like something just subpar or average, it's still really affordable, I would say. But yeah, if you want something that's like really nice or iconic, then it can be like crazy expensive nowadays. It all just depends on like what it is and where you're getting it from.
It makes sense though. Like, over time, the rarity would increase, not decrease.
Yeah.
So I guess that does make sense. I'm excited that we're starting this show. Card Captors is another one that has always been like really important for me alongside Sailor Moon. And I don't know if you noticed it, but it's like there are certain music stings in it. Like the song they play when they are riding to school. That one, it's like there's nothing that, I don't know, like epic about it, but it hits so well. Like, it's, I just think whoever did the music for this and Sailor Moon both. I know Bob Summers did the English Deke stuff, but they're so talented in the Japanese Sailor Moon music. I think the music in anime is one of the things in general that levels it up above other forms of animation, at least for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm so excited about this. All right. Do you want to add anything else?
Well, just in general, I can actually send it to you quick here on Instagram so you can just maybe tell people what it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite things that I have production art-wise is it's a really sizable sketch set of Toya and Yukito from the first movie. Here, I'll pull it up.
There's 2 movies, right? Yeah.
Yeah, only the first one had a dub in this censored Canadian cast, and then the second movie was had a Los Angeles based dub.
I have the VHS on the first one. I'm sure that's the old one. I really like the first movie. I think do you remember the part where they're like running through the shop, like the market?
Yeah.
And I think they're in. Is it China?
Yep.
Where they go? I always thought that was so freaking interesting and cool. These are really cute. So what's the story for this sketch set again?
It's from the first. The pictures kind of look like shit on DM, but it's from the first movie.
So it's a sketch set of, I know them as Tori and Julian. You say their Japanese names.
Yukito and Toya.
And they're kind of talking to each other, and there's like all these different expressions, and we get to see like happy Yukito. They're both kind of doing a sweat drop moment. I love that kind of animation with the eyes like that. How would you describe those eyes?
They're like tiny and more cartoony.
Yeah, it's like they drop the whites of the eye to make it look like they're kind of like, what? These are really, really nice. I can post these with the first episode so people can see them too. That would be cool.
I'll have to send it to you like via different format so they don't look like crap when you download them. Then.
I know. Email it to me. I'll download them directly. All right, cool. Well, that's it for today. We're all set then, and I'll see you next Friday. Does that sound good?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you all for listening to the first episode of Keepers of the Clow, the podcast edition. Just a reminder, if you would like to get the full experience, check out all the links in every episode's description. There you will find a link to our official website, a link to the corresponding video version of the podcast episode if you would like to have the full experience. Maybe you just want to get both versions. And the official Keepers of the Clow Facebook page. So go ahead and check all of those out, and I will see you next time. Bye! Keepers of the Clow is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We claim no ownership over any licensed or copyrighted materials used during the creation of this show, or any materials created in relation to Keepers of the Clow. All licensed or copyrighted materials belong expressly to the license and copyright holders.